Hi, I'm Chef Mike from East Central College, and I'm back again with the Field to Fork demo series with the Missouri Department of Conservation. And today we're focusing on the loin section of the venison. And what we're going to be doing with that is we're going to be doing a little bacon wrapped loin, and we're going to pair that with a little cream spinach, a little garlic crouton, with a little bit of fried onions on top of that. So it's a pretty hearty meal, very rich. But we're highlighting the loin, which is one of the premier cuts of the animal, so I wanted to make sure I highlighted to its highest potential. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna focus on my knife cuts and make sure I get them out of the way before I start working with my protein. And as you may have seen in the butchery video from a previous time, we denuded the entire loin, which means we removed all of the sinew, all of that silver skin, so it should just be that beautiful eye muscle. We're gonna cook that to a nice medium rare medium. It should be perfect. So right now I'm cutting my croutons. Again, a beautiful loin is gonna have some juices running out of it, and there's nothing better to scoop those up than a nice crispy crouton. So I'm just cutting these on a bias to create a little bit more surface area so they look larger. All right, and then what I'm gonna do is, in a bowl, we're gonna toss these with a little olive oil, a little fresh chopped rosemary from our garden, and that beautiful fragrant flavor of the rosemary should really come through with these croutons. A little garlic, granulated garlic. All right, we're gonna toss that up. Toss that up. And then I'm gonna take these and I'm gonna place them on a roasting rack with a little bit of room in between and pop them in the oven, get them nice and golden brown. All right, and then the next thing I'm gonna do is I need to cut my onions so that I can get my cream spinach base started. So what I'm gonna do with this is I'm gonna show you guys the cut, and then I'm gonna pass this off to my sous chef Rob over here, and he's gonna finish it for me. All right. So basically what I do is I wanna do a small dice. So I'm gonna cut down every 1/4 of an inch, leaving the end of the onion intact. All right, that kind of holds everything together, keeps you from making a big mess on your cutting board. All right, and then I'll come back and I'll cut in, and then I'll come back for a nice small dice, okay? And again, I'm gonna pass this off to Rob, and I'm gonna let him run with it. Oh, that's a great idea. All right, and while Rob's finishing up those onions for me, I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys what I'm looking at for my mushrooms, okay? I'm gonna throw a little bit of mushrooms in with my cream spinach. And this summer, or this spring rather, I had a pretty good morel harvest. And I dehydrated some of them. And I've been holding on to them for an occasion just like this. So I got some beautiful foraged morels, rehydrated, and all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut little rings of it. Okay? So basically I'm creating little mushroom Cheerios, for lack of a better explanation. All right, so we're cutting all of our mushrooms. Perfect. So we got our mushrooms here. We're gonna set those aside for a moment. I have some minced garlic. I'm gonna set that here for a moment. And I think I'm ready to look at my loin. So what I'm doing here is we're going to take this venison loin, which has been par-seared, and we're gonna wrap it in bacon. And what we do with this is, I laid the bacon out, I pound it out with a meat mallet to make sure it's a thin consistency, or a thin thickness, so that it wraps evenly around the loin, it cooks evenly, so that when I go to cut it, it's not falling apart. I still end up with that nice wrapper on the outside. So I have one that I did beforehand, but I also have one that I'm gonna demo for you. So here is my first one. Which I've done a great job wrapping, if I don't mind saying so myself. A little non-stick spray on there. The bacon itself should do the job, but better safe than sorry. All right, and then it's very important that when you do this, that your seam is on the bottom, okay? And I'm gonna show you a little bit more clearly with the second one here. So what this looks like is I've laid out all my bacon. I've laid plastic out, I've laid my strips of bacon out, slightly overlapping each other, and then I've come back with a meat mallet, and I've very gently just kind of pounded the entire thing from left to right. And what that's doing is that's spreading it out. It's gonna end up with an even covering. So I'll remove that top piece of plastic. And bacon wraps are kind of cool because they're extremely versatile. You can do this with any cut of meat, pretty much. I've seen people go as far as wrapping an entire chicken in bacon and then roasting it on a barbecue. So, all right, so what I've done again, I've laid out all my bacon in between two pieces of plastic. I've taken my meat mallet, I've given it a little pat so it's nice and thin. And then what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna lay my loin in here. I'm gonna leave a little bit overlapping on this side. And then what I wanna do is I wanna roll it to figure out how much of a wrap I'm gonna need. All right, so technically I should only need this much. I'm gonna give myself a little extra. And all this bacon I'm trimming off is gonna be used in my cream spinach anyway, so. Perfect. All right, so we'll go ahead and save our bacon. All right, so again, leaving about an inch on the end. I'm gonna overlap, and it looks like I'm gonna have to remove a couple slices here because my wrap is too long. All right, but better safe than sorry. So I'll put that guy in there. And then using the plastic, I'm just gonna kinda bring everything over and bring everything together. All right? And then I'm gonna keep using that plastic. I have my seam on the bottom there. All right, so I should have a beautiful bacon wrapped venison loin. And again, so you can see the bacon seam here, we want that on the bottom. So as that renders, that's gonna kind of cook together and fasten itself. We'll save our bacon for a moment. My two loins, center those up. And we're gonna go ahead and pop these in the oven. They're gonna take about, I'd say 15 to 20 minutes on about 350 degrees, and then they're gonna need about 10 minutes to rest as well. And my croutons that have been in there for about 5 minutes are nice and starting to get crispy there. I'll buy that. We're gonna leave those over here to cool for a moment. All right, now the fun part, the cream spinach. So I'm taking this extra bacon that I had from my wrap, because again, I don't want to waste anything. All this stuff is usable. I'm gonna give it a nice thin lardon. And what I'm looking to do here is just get enough bacon in there that it produces enough fat to saute my onions and my garlic, and then go ahead and make a little roux out of it. And a roux is essentially just fat and flour, and it's used to thicken liquids. So we're gonna use that roux to thicken some milk as our base for our cream spinach. All right, so I got my bacon here. And let's be honest, I mean, I don't think you can have too much bacon, so. All right, throw a chop through that way. All right, bacon in the pan. And you can hear that start to sizzle. I'm gonna let that render. And when I say render, basically what I'm looking to do is cook it long enough that all the fat extrudes from it. Because again, I'm using that fat to make my roux. Go ahead and put this down low. I'm good, Robert, thank you. So again, I'm just trying to let this bacon kind of crisp up a little bit. I'm trying to let it cook long enough so that all the fat renders out of it, because I'm going to use that fat for my roux base, which is again imparting flavor into my cream spinach. So should be real nice. All right, onions. Thank you, Rob. All right. Joe, will you grab me a small rubber spatula? Thank you, man. All right, so my bacon fat's starting to come out. It's starting to get a little crisp. I'm gonna hit about a quarter of that onion, small diced. Throw that in there. Throw my beautiful morel mushrooms in. And I'd say about a tablespoon of the minced garlic. Please feel free to be your own judge on the garlic. I'm Italian, I really like garlic, so I put excessive garlic in everything. And you can just smell that. That just lights up the cream spinach base. The earthiness of the mushrooms, the meatiness of the pork, and then the fragrance of the garlic and the onions is beautiful. All right, so we're gonna cook that for a minute. And then I have my flour here. I'm gonna add a little bit of fat to that just to soak up my flour. All right. And basically, I just kind of dust my flour in there. And it's usually a 1-to-1 ratio, so if you use an ounce of flour or an ounce of fat, you're using an ounce of flour. And that should, hypothetically, that should thicken 4 ounces of liquid. to a sauce viscosity. So I've gotten my flour in there, my mushrooms, my onions, my bacon. Now we are going to deglaze with a little bit of sherry. Sherry is a fortified wine. It's just going to add a little sweetness and a little dimension or a little depth to the flavor. All right. And I used a large saute pan, and you'll see why in a minute. If anybody's ever cooked spinach, you know that you start with a mountain of spinach and you end up with one serving. So I want to start with a large enough pan that I'm able to go ahead and add the spinach accordingly into a vessel that it will be able to receive all of it when it's all said and done. So there goes my sherry. Again, a little fortified liquor in there. Add a little dimension of flavor. And in with my milk. And I'm going to add half of the milk. I want to make sure that the roux that I have in there is able to thicken the amount of liquid that I'm using. I can always add more liquid. It's difficult to take it away or make thicker. All right. And it looks like we're going to be just fine. So we're going to go ahead and add the rest of the milk. We're going to be just fine as far as thickness goes. And I can tell by the size of my bubbles in my liquid here. The smaller my bubbles get, potentially the thicker the sauce ends up being. Robert, can you hand me that small pot on that bottom? Nope, one down, yep. Super. Gracias. All right. Then we have some lovely spinach here that's going to go into our cream spinach base. And the cool thing about this is you can make a base like this a couple days in advance and just reconstitute it by heating it up in a little bit of cold liquid. And I think, you know, that's something that everybody should have a good grasp on is what can I prepare ahead? What can I do to make cooking easier? Because I think that's what stops a lot of people from cooking for themselves and their family. So again, this cream spinach base I could have made 2 days ago. Put a little bit of liquid in here, heat it up. It's going to do the same thing. All right. While it's doing that, I am going to take all of my spinach here, a large bowl. This is going to be about 3 portions when it's all said and done. And I'm just going to incorporate it into the base in 2 parts. I'm going to let that wilt a little bit. Once that wilts, then I'm going to come back and I'm going to add that second part. I'm then going to transfer it to a smaller pot where it can simmer for another 15 minutes. Do a little adjustment on the oven there. All right, we're starting to come together. Spinach is almost all wilted. And all I'm trying to do here is just scrape my sides, scrape my bottom, make sure nothing's sticking. That's where I get burns. That's where I get unwelcome flavors. So make sure we keep any burning down to a minimum. All right, and again, once this all wilts, I'm going to transfer it to a little bit smaller pot and let it finish its cooking over there. But if I'd have tried to feed all this spinach into this little pot, I would have had a mess all over my stove and my table. So one of the things we try to do in the kitchen is work as clean as we can. All right, so the final element of this dish is going to be a little bit of fried tobacco onions. And to do this, we just take some white onion on a mandolin and slice it into very thin rings. Okay, so I'm looking at about 1/32 of an inch thick, maybe. But the reason we want it so thin is because we're going to cook them very quickly, get them nice and crisp. They're just for a garnish. All right, I think I'm done here on my spinach. Scrape that in there. Oh, I can see those lovely morels. I can smell the garlic, I can smell the bacon. Make sure I get everything out of here. Again, just make sure I'm scraping everything out. All right, cream spinach. Yummo. All right, so then the last element of that is going to be nutmeg. And I find nutmeg, most people think it's just a baking spice, but I find what it does for green vegetables is pretty awesome. It just really plays off the earthy flavors that come with the green vegetable and enhances them and gives them a floral element. Just a lot of fun. So if you got kids at home that say, I don't want to eat spinach, try throwing a little nutmeg in there and see if they don't change their tune. They probably won't. All right. Let that do its thing. Add a little ounce of water in there. Thin it out for me. Oh yeah, that looks beautiful. All right, last but not least, tobacco onions. So I have here a little seasoned flour. I've done a little salt, pepper, cumin, and a little sugar. And that sugar kind of adds a little caramelization and again another dimension of flavor that we're looking for. So we want to leave our guests excited. We want to leave them wanting more venison. All right, so I've pre-sliced my onions here. And I'm basically, again, going to just drag them in my seasoned flour here. Dust off any extra flour I may have to make sure that I don't end up with clumps. I want nice rings. Okay? All right, so we're just going to toss that up a little bit. And right now I'm just kind of keeping an eye on my cream spinach because I don't want that to scorch. That roux, thickening the milk as the base, potentially sticks and burns pretty easily. So making sure that you're aware of where that's at is important. Smells nice. All right, and I'm back. A little stir on my spinach here. And really all I'm looking for, spinach cooks pretty quickly. You can cook it until it's mush, which some people prefer. I prefer a little bite to it. So I always use fresh spinach as opposed to frozen spinach. Again, a little bit more body to it. And I enjoy that earthy flavor. I'm gonna give that a little taste to make sure we're good. And we're not good. I'm gonna add a little salt to that. I'm gonna add a pinch more nutmeg. I'm gonna do a couple cracks of pepper here. That's nice. And our loins are coming along nice. Our bacon's starting to get crispy around the edges. I'd say we got about another 5 minutes on those, and then we'll pull them out, and I think we'll let them rest for about 10 minutes before we slice into them. All right, so with my onions here, toss them in flour. I have a rondeau here full of fryer oil. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of flour in there to make sure this oil's hot enough so I can make sure I get a good fry on my onions. If it's too hot, it's going to burn the outside of the onions and still leave them raw in the middle, which isn't going to leave them crisp. If it's too cold, they're just going to sit there and they're going to soak up all that grease. So it's got to be a nice 360 degrees is usually what we typically fry at for items like this. So the larger the item, the more that temperature goes down and the time extends. All right, so sprinkle my onions in. Okay. Toss them around a little bit. Again, I want a nice golden brown. You know what a nice onion ring looks like when it comes out. That's what we're looking for. And then I have a little bowl over here with a couple of paper towels in it. And that's going to be used as my receptacle afterwards. Okay, so again, just letting them fry up, get a nice golden brown. And I'm going to wait a minute because I still have some light golden brown in there. And that kind of signals to me that this product could become soggy again when the juices from the onion kind of release from the temperature. All right, so a nice golden brown. And these guys should stay crispy for me for about a good half an hour. I want to get all of my little onion remnants out of here. I'm going to try and use this oil again. All right. And then I have a little seasoning here. This is a little Lowry seasoning. I'm just going to kind of sprinkle this on top at the very end after it comes out of the fryer. And then give them a little toss. All right, so I have onions, cream spinach, croutons. All we are waiting on is the bacon wrap loin. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get my station cleaned up here. One more taste on my cream spinach. So I think I need to cook this a little bit longer just to kind of let some of the moisture evaporate. And the good news is my spinach is still has a nice texture to it, so I'm not worried about overcooking that into mush. It's still got a lovely green to it. Once it starts turning kind of a camouflage green is when you know you're starting to overcook it. Again. So again, my lovely croutons here. Cream spinach base. Check on our loin again. Oh yeah. I cranked the oven up a little bit just to kind of get a little more crisp on the bacon. And then again, a 5-minute rest, and we should be ready to go. So in the meantime, I can go ahead and start getting my plating area ready. I'm laying out all my plates over here to my right. Cream spinach is all good. All right. So you can kind of see here, all right, I got a beautiful wrap still on my loins here. I have what feels like a good medium rare going on. So I just want a little more crisp on my bacon, and then it should be ready to serve. So again, I'm gonna do some behind the scenes magic. I'll be right back. So here's what I'm looking for, guys. Anytime we're doing a carved piece of meat or a roast or something like that, that's the last thing that goes on the plate, okay? That's carved a la minute. So basically, we can have these plates already composed, ready to just receive the meat and go out to the guests. So I'm gonna do a couple different plate ups on this one. I saw both a long rectangle and a round plate working kind of well for what we're doing here. So, who wants to be my cream spinach person? Robert does. All right, Robert, what I want is a nice little 2-ouncer there right in the middle. Okay. And then on this one, same thing. Only very good. Jill, why don't you come back with that crouton and just use that to kind of push that cream spinach down a little bit, okay? Robert's do all the rounds first and then all right, and again, anytime we do a roast, it's important to let it rest. That's allowing the juices to redistribute throughout the meat. If I were to cut into this as soon as it came out of the oven, all those juices would run out. Then I have a nasty dry piece of meat. Let's see how we did. Oh yeah. So we'll present these medallion style. And then on the rectangles, I'll just do, oh, we did a nice cook on these guys. Could have done a little more rest with it, but nice cook. Okay. And then Jill, you can come back and can you just kind of give me a couple little drips around the plate? And then Robert, see if you can perch that up there. Top. that one better. We just do them right there. Yep. You could just do a little line right here. So then we have our bacon wrapped venison loin, a top cream spinach, a little bit of tobacco onions on top, a little crouton underneath. Should be a tasty little dish. Let's enjoy.